Hello, everyone, and welcome to what we're calling Season 2 of Meet the Board for Crime Writers of Canada. We're calling it Season 2 because many of the Season 1 members are no longer on the board of directors. So today we're starting at the top. We're having an interview with Hyacinthe Miller, our new chair. So welcome, Hyacinthe. How are you?
Thank you very much. It's great to be here, Eric. I'm great. It's fall in Ontario and we have frost on the ground.
Really, it's fall in Vancouver and it still feels like summer. So I'm not bragging.
There you are.
Things change fast in Canada. So let's start with your writing. You're an award-winning author of short stories, magazines, newspaper articles, contemporary women's fiction, and nonfiction. Your fiction has been published in Herotica, Whispered Words, the Allucinor, Elements of Romance, and your debut novel, Kenora Reinvented, is available now. I'm not hearing a lot of crime writing, obviously some in your novel, but do you particularly focus on crime or do you write all kinds of stuff?
Well, let's talk about the book before I get into the other stuff. Kenora
Sure.
Reinvented. It took me 10 years to get the courage to hit publish, right? I was working with an agent who wanted me to change my character, change her age. She's 42. It's called seasoned romance with investigations and mystery. That's sort of the tagline, right? Her mother dies, she gets dumped, she gets fired. So she has to start over. And it's a common theme among middle-aged women. And I guess 42 is a little young to be middle-aged, but I tried to sort of cram her into that box. So she starts over as a rookie private investigator, doing things that she thinks are right, but she gets into trouble. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the theme of it. So there is crime, there's a inventory fraud, there's a homicide that takes place off screen. So there is a mixture of mystery and crime, and she's got to solve stuff. And she saves herself. I mean, that's the key theme. Yes, she's doing her job, but she saves herself as well. And she finds out who she really is. That's book one. Book two, she's thrown for a loop and she's got to start over, reinventing herself again. So that's the fun part of writing fiction. But in terms of my career, I've always been a writer. The first story I remember writing, I was probably about 12. I wrote it for my brothers, and it was a story called Whiffy the Skunk. And we lived on a farm. So it was an easy write, but obviously it did not get published. It didn't go anywhere. It was a lot of fun. It kept them entertained.
Going back to the book, then you mentioned Kenora is, in your own words, she's clever, passionate, female sleuth, but she has trouble following someone else's rules. She's working in a world now in the private investigating where, I mean, rules could be gray, but breaking the rules could also get her in a lot of trouble. I'm halfway through the book, and this is obviously what's happening. And I'm wondering if she can handle it as a PI. And you mentioned book two. Do you think she has what it takes to be a PI?
She's growing into it. It's like any of us when you start a new job. I mean, you're there, you're anxious. What do I wear? How do I behave? Who do I talk to? So it's just the classic sort of, hero's journey or heroine's journey, if you will. Mm-hmm. So yeah, she does. And if she doesn't, I have to make her so, because I'm the one who's creating her. Someone has lived in my head for 20 years, right? So, but I do get to shape her to be better, faster, smarter. But mm-hmm. Then she really does dumb things that she now has to solve her way out of. So that's the fun of creating characters, right?
That's
and
true.
I love creating quirky characters. So as a PI, she gets to do those kinds of things and meet those people she wouldn't ordinarily have met as a manager in a library at a university. But also, just to give you a link, my career since 1993, I've worked in the policing sector. I was an adjudicator with the Ontario Civilian Police Commission for 10 years. I'm also an organizational development consultant still across Canada in the policing sector. So I have lots of stories that I've heard, the water cooler stories. Cops love to tell stories. And some of them are usable. Some of them are like, no. So that's why I've made her mentor, Bosco, Kenora's mentor, Bosco, mm-hmm. that sort of quirky guy who brings these stories to the forefront. So yeah, so that's the fun of it. But I've also written things like legal documents, briefing notes, policy papers, technical manuals. So I've got that sort of eclectic background, if you will. Um, but I'm also, and I'll talk about this a little later with respect to Crime Writers of Canada, I'm an organizer. You may not be able to tell it from my bookshelf because I'm also a hoarder of books and information and knitting patterns and whatever, cookbooks. So yeah, that's about me. I live in New York region and there wasn't much going on here for writers. So 12 years ago, a group of us got together and established the writers community of York region to do in a very small scale what I'm now hoping to do with Crime Writers of Canada. So some of the elements are bringing in expert writers, authors of all genres to basically share their journey, but also answer questions because that's how we learn from others.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my goals for Crime Writers of Canada, to do more of that. And you're an instrumental part of that with your webinars. And we're hoping to expand on that with more craft sessions. So bringing in experts who teach this for our members to access. Yeah, it's
I think you've answered about 3 of my questions for you.
Sorry about that. So my brothers and I joke and say we've got a writing gene. My dad was a poet. He wrote a book about poetry about his experience in the war. My mother was her incredibly prolific correspondent, write letters, notes, journals, whatever. So it's sort of in our blood. So I can't not write. I'm passionate about what we can do with for our members. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, so I'll let you talk.
That's all right. That's all right. Let me go a little bit more into the book, because one of the funniest things you said quirky characters, and I don't want to spoil your fun, and I don't think it's a spoiler, but you mentioned that Kenora has an ex-husband. Could you tell us where he found his soulmate?
Oh my God, his name is gee, I have to remember, Ravi. He found, okay, so Kenora played hockey on Sunday nights. She was a manager of a library, of a university library. And her husband was going through middle-aged, they call it middle-aged crazy, middle-aged crisis. So he started going to Bible study classes. And he met a woman there who was his faith coach. And that became his new squeeze. He went off in a different direction. And I think as I described him, she ran into him at a cocktail party. He had lifts in his shoes. He'd gotten sort of new teeth. He was wearing different kind of clothing. He basically was trying to remake himself, which was not quite a parallel to her having to reinvent herself. But that was Ravi, the ex-husband. And he was sort of cranky, right? Because Kenora is a strong personality. And, after she was a soccer mom, her kids left home, they're living their dream. And she started questioning her life, which many middle-aged women or middle-aged people do, right? What am I doing? What have I accomplished? And then all of these crises happen in her life. But Ravi is sort of in the back. He's part of her backstory, but I do have her recollect some of her experiences with him as she's trying to chart a new path, because it so happens that her new boss becomes a love interest. And that was a challenge to write, because being in the work world for so long, I've seen it happen, and it usually doesn't end well. Right? Usually for the women, it doesn't end well. But so she's struggling with that as well, being a recent divorcee, a fixer-upper house in Booneyville. And how does she chart this new path? So those are some of the challenges I've given her.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
Are standard, right?
Yes, I find in every book, it kind of goes on a path of like, okay, this is interesting. And then there's a line that pulls you in. And when you said that she lost her husband, or her husband found a soulmate at Bible camp. That's what I was sold. That was it at that point.
Well, it had to be something different. I mean,
Yes.
we all know of the standard tropes of stories, the office romance. I wanted this to be a little different, and this is about as different as it could be, right? Because it
Yes.
sort of turns the convention on its head.
Yes.
You go to Bible class or Bible camp to get more piety, but instead,
Also unpacking some of what you said. You said currently you're working for the police, I believe. Community development is.
I do organizational development, so I've done it in different police agencies across Canada. So what happens is when something, usually HR related or policy or process related, breaks, like a public complaint system, I get a phone call and they'll say, can you come in and help us fix it? I set up a team, we examine the problem, we come up with solutions, because I'm not the one who has the solutions. I'm there to help them focus on what will work best. And then I write my report and then I leave.
I think that's fantastic, because I'm wondering, I'm not going to say Crime Rising Canada is broken, but can you bring those skills to an organization like this with like 400 members and 400
400
viewpoints?
members is awesome, but it's also awe-inspiring. To me, it's a heavy responsibility to have that many members across the spectrum of writing, whether it's professionals or emerging or getting ready, to publish. It's such a big audience. So one of the things we're going to do is send out surveys. We're going to send a survey to past and current board members asking for their vision of CWC. And then based on what they give us, we're going to go back to them. We're going to go to the membership and ask them for their input, because we're here for the members. That's if I can sort of say it loud and proud, we're here for our members, but we need to hear from them. We don't have all the answers. The board is small, and we'd love to have more volunteers on the board for short-term projects. But we need to hear from the members what they bring and what they'd like to do. So things like we've been talking about reorganizing the staff contracts to be consistent. I have the legal stuff in my head, so I'm trying to make some, there's accountability, there's our responsibility to our staff as well. So there's that balance, right? We're bringing in, we have to be fiscally prudent. So offering courses or programming for our members could cost money, and we run on our memberships. Our membership fees support our operations. So we have to have that delicate balance where we support our members, we respond to what they need, but we also keep the organization strong and solvent. So that's what I'm looking at. I'll give you another example. The website needs some work. I find it a bit challenging to use, but again, I'm used to dealing with things on the bare bones, clean, easy to manage, find where I want, and then get out. So there's things like that. We're talking about, we're going to revise our 5-year strategic plan based on input from the board and the members. So going forward, we're going to chart a path going forward. So those are some of the things that I bring from my work career to my this incredible position. It's sometimes I wake up and I go, oh my God, what have I signed up for? Because it's big, Eric, that.
Yes.
Right? Expectations are high. We have awards of excellence, which again is such an incredible thing to offer. But behind the scenes, as I'm becoming aware, it's a lot of work. Hundreds of submissions, right? Full-length novels. We have to have judges. We have a jury selection committee. And I don't know if we're doing a good enough job at letting our members know how much work goes on behind the scenes to keep the front facing, the outward facing, elements running smoothly.
Yeah. Giving props where they deserve. Ludvika does so much.
Our associate executive director, just humming along in the background, quietly, competently, lots of ideas. And I have to give props to all of our staff, to you, to our executive director, Allison, and to Ludvika, just ideas, coming up with ideas, being candid, right? An organization like this can't work if people are like governing what they say. just say it. We're all professionals here, and we need that kind of candor, but also new ideas, right?
One new idea that I believe it was you brought to the table is sort of an alliance or a partnership with Allie.
So that's another one of my goals, forging partnerships with professional organizations. So ALLIE stands for the Alliance of Independent Authors. It's a UK-based organization that's been around for 10 years. They have thousands of members across the globe, but their focus is on independent publishing, self-publishing. But their resources, they have 3,000 blog posts. They have an author beware function where if you get sort of a dodgy, people will contact you and go, hey, we want to work on your website or publish your book. We can send it to ALLIE and get them to let us know whether it's dodgy or whether it's legitimate. They have lists of vetted service providers, whether it's agents, publishers, illustrators, whatever. So they bring us, partnering with them, gives us access to a much broader audience for CWC, but also allows us to bring those resources in for our members.
So that's something to look forward to. I know another one of your goal is to have a stronger outreach for underrepresented writers. Could you speak to that a bit?
Yes. Now, CWC has been around for 40 years. That's a long time. And that speaks to the quality of the leadership that there's been, but also the vibrancy of our membership. But because I did that work most recently for the Ontario Provincial Police, looking at equity and inclusivity, I'm aware that we need to reach out to across Canada to what, as you said, underrepresented writers in crime and mystery genre, right?
Yes.
So we're talking culturally, religious, ethnically, geographically. We have few writers that we know of who write mystery, for example, in Yukon or Nunavut, or, in some of the Western provinces. They're out there. But again, we have to know where they are, who they are, and what they need from us. So it's a circular type of process. So yeah, that's one of my goals. So what I'm going to do in the next few weeks, I'm writing letters to different organizations that work with underrepresented, like the Fold, the Festival of Literary Diversity. We're going to talk to the Eden Mills Writers Festival. There's something called Diversity Inc. There's a number of groups in Canada that we can link up with, if not in partnership, at least to share resources perhaps, or give them awareness that we're here, because that's part of it, right? Making people aware that we're here. Yes,
and I think your last key point is communication. If you're watching, in fact, let's make it easy. If you're watching this video on Facebook, if you have any questions for Hyacinthe, even if you're not watching it live, if you put it in the comment section, we'll go back and check and answer them there.
Absolutely.
We can learn more about you at your websites. You have a couple, I think, hyacinthemillerbooks.com, but also you have Write in Plain Sight, which is more of just blogging.
Just, chit chat. One year, about 5 years ago, I blogged every single day.
Oh.
But that's when I really got writing on my book, because the discipline of having to sit down and think, oh God, what am I going to write about today? The weather, making squash soup, whatever. It was a lot of pressure, but also I was probably most productive during that period of time.
On your writer's website, you have a very interesting post on writing about stereotypes. We don't have to talk about it too much now, and I don't want to put you on the spot. So let's encourage people to go there. I found the article very interesting. Is this something sort of, I don't want to call it a passion project, but it's in some ways it's contentious in Canada. Writing diversity, staying in our lane.
It is. Well, I was invited to do a guest post for a website called Writers Helping Writers, which is a tremendous resource for everybody, who's interested in writing. But I also did a panel at the Maple Leaf Mystery Conference on a similar topic. So the purpose of the article was to talk about stereotypes. So, I grew up, those of us who grew up with 80s and 90s TV, when we look back on things like Sanford and Son and Archie Bunker and some of the Cagney and Lacey, and now we go, ooh. right? I mean, the stereotypes just leap. We don't have to be like sensitive or woke. The stereotypes, you know, it just, they leap out at you, no matter how unaware you might be. But for a lot of folks, that's the only place they get to learn about other cultures or other ethnicities. Because we have to accept that we're still outside of the Greater Toronto area, we're still pretty, what's the word I'm looking for?
Pale?
Non-represent, well, non-represent, not as representative, perhaps. And it's interesting too. I'll just give you this little anecdote from policing. When I was going out to the different regions across Ontario to talk about, you know, diversity, and someone would say, well, we don't have any diversity. And I go, but excuse me, I've been on the road for a long time. Yeah, you do. But just because they haven't come to your attention, because they've broken the law usually, doesn't mean they're not there. The law-abiding, you know, gas station owner, there's in every town in Canada, there's probably a Chinese restaurant. Now there'll be a shawarma sandwich place. The folks are there. And all it takes is for us to walk up. Hello, how you doing? My name is Hyacinthe. I'd like to talk to you about your culture. People do that to me. I've been in, let me give you another example. I've been in the subway, and a little kid usually, or an older person whose language isn't English, and they'll go, right? I'm not offended because they don't know. Eric, they don't know. So I'd rather, I saw your face, right? Well, but for me, it's just like, well, okay, how are they going to learn?
Fair
Right?
enough. Yes.
And again, that's what we learned from our parents, that we are role models.
Yeah.
You know, they used to say, you know, we have to be a credit to our race.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm mixed race. And 10 years ago, everybody always used to ask me what's your background? I get it all the time. Times have changed so much that I can see it's on the tip of their tongue.
And they sort of go, oh, nope.
Nope, not allowed to ask that.
I know.
Yeah, so it's good that writers are writing about it and sort of giving advice as best we can.
But also differently abled, you know, different gender identity, gender expression. But the gist of the article was, don't just think you know it because you've seen someone on TV, The Big Bang Theory or whatever. Find somebody and talk to them. Ask them a question. It's okay. Be respectful, right? But just tell them why. It's the same thing. How many times have I had chats with authors who are writing police procedurals, and they'll tell me the sort of the plot line, and I'll go, police in Canada can't do that. And they'll go, what? Because I know policing. I've spent 30 years in it. It's not like in the States. They don't have a spare firearm in their sock. They can't just jump up and go somewhere and do an investigation in another province. The rules are very rigid. Civilian oversight is huge. I did that for 14 years. And yet writers are resistant. They want sort of the Sam Malone, hard-bitten, you know, get out there. And no, in Canada, PIs cannot, I can't trespass and look in your window. I can't bug your vehicle. That's against the law. And a number of writers, they don't want to hear it. And it's like, you know what? It's your book. Do what you want. Because I also have to consider that I might be too narrowly focused on the rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I do as another side hustle, I'm a script consultant for a local producer who does movies. And one of the ones we're working on is for BET is sort of a version of Die Hard. And it's a police procedural. So things like, who gets the handcuffs? Do they have a firearm? Well, if it's in the US, totally different rules. So I have to learn. So one of the things I would encourage folks who are watching is that never stop learning. There's podcasts, there's blogs, there's our webinars. Go out and learn. I realize that when the writing bug gets into your fingers or your, whatever, you want to get it down, but then do your research. That's as important as your writing. You want to get it right, because if someone looks at it and they go, nah, it's not realistic, right?
Yes.
Like someone getting shot and then just leaping up and then, no, dear. No, or Vera. I don't know if you've ever watched the British series Vera. She goes, no, pet. That's not how it works. You get shot today. You know, the bad guys are using armor-piercing bullets. The police use what they used to call them, hollow points, but they're
Hollow
expanding.
points, yeah.
You get shot today, you're disabled. You cannot sort of like Jack Reacher, just sort of crawl up and then, you know, tackle the
Beat 'em.
bad guy. You're bleeding out. In any event. So that's another topic that writers, helping writers, they had a section on medical realism in writing. And again, I would encourage our authors to check that out, because again, from TV, we have this false false idea that, oh, it's just a shoulder wound. You know what it's like to get hit by a squash ball? Oh.
Well, Hyacinth, I think the board at least is in good hands. Hopefully we'll have some more episodes soon, and we'll talk to some more board members. I remember you saying, let's keep this quick, and we did not do that, but it was so much information. I think a lot of our members want to know you, and this helps a lot. And also want to know your vision. And, you know, as I'm not a board member, but privy to your board meetings, I know that the wheels are turning, and good talking with you today.
And we wanted to, as I said, this is for our members as well as for us. It's ambitious, but we can do this. We have the will, we have the energy, and I'm looking for more people to step forward and say, hey, this is what I'd like to do. How can I help? We need that for the judges for the awards of excellence. We need it for the board, as well as for ongoing projects. So if I can just sort of welcome you or invite you to come to the table and sit down with us and let's talk, you know?
Let's talk. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you,
great.
everyone watching this. Pleasure talking to you, Hyacinthe, and we'll talk lots more.
Okay. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.